Tonight, funds to fix flood damage.
We are making progress, but we can't let down our laurels, right?
Millions of dollars of improvements will soon be coming to important infrastructure in Red Lodge and Cook City. Plus, time is ticking down on TikTok.
I signed up for this app my own free will. I gave them my information because I feel like it's not really valued because it's sold so easily.
The popular social media app is facing a ban, leaving high school students searching for alternatives. And off the shelves,
the things that they hide food dyes in is crazy. We have to constantly be reading labels.
The FDA is banning red dye 3 in foods. Good news for one Billings family while putting 100 brands at risk. The MTN 530 News starts right now.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 530 News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. The historic floods of 2022 may be in the rearview mirror for most of us, but in the communities of Red Lodge and Cook City, the repairs continue almost 3 years later. And tonight, a big boost to those efforts. The U.S. Department of Commerce is investing $10.5 million for infrastructure improvements, with nearly $3 million of those dollars ticketed for Red Lodge. Tonight, our Charlie Klepp says more on where that money will go and the impact it could have.
It's been 2.5 years now since Red Lodge was devastated by those historic floods. And while there has been progress, there's still more work that needs to be done. Well, on Thursday, the community received some good news as funding was approved, which will continue to rebuild roads and streets, including this one, which leads directly into Red Lodge High School.
Yeah, when we had the flood come through Red Lodge, all the businesses were affected.
It's a time many Red Lodge businesses still think about.
We saw a significant drop in business for that entire summer as a result of those floods.
Historic floods in June of 2022, which damaged city infrastructure and set the economy back all over town.
It was challenging to get through that summer.
Red Lodge Pizza Company owner Tom Kuntz is among the many that felt those struggles. But as recovery has been made, the flood has served as a lesson, reminding the community of infrastructure problems it's had for years.
The stormwater system has always been an issue for Red Lodge,
which had led to flooding even during less severe storms.
Basically, anything that was coming down as rainwater was ending up in our sewer, and we're having to treat that.
Red Lodge Mayor Dave Westwood says repairing the stormwater system became a focus of the city post-floods. A plan was budgeted to do little chunks at a time.
We set it up at a pace that allowed us to approach about 2 to 3 blocks every other year. And this section that we're on right now, which leads up to the high school, was one of those first sections we identified.
But now this 3-block project has gotten a little bigger. After almost $3 million in funding were approved by the EDA, the city is looking to upgrade about 13 blocks instead.
This is really important. We don't get to do stuff like this unless we find access to other funds to help us do so.
Great news and a big relief for businesses and residents in the area.
And so it's really exciting to see this project come together for our small community.
In Red Lodge, Charlie Klepp, MTN News.
Meanwhile, $7.6 million from that grant is headed for Cook City and their water and sewer district. Those new funds will be used to construct a new wastewater collection and treatment system. The hope is that that new system will support local businesses impacted by the natural disaster. The investment will also be matched with $1.9 million in local funds, which will help create or retain more than 20 jobs and generate $280,000 in private investment. The clock is ticking on TikTok with a potential ban now just days away. Well, a last-minute deal could be struck to keep it alive. The fate of 1.8 billion users hangs in the balance. Our Marcus Kakova met with high school students of a local media class to find out what they'll do, where they'll migrate to, and if they feel they were listened to by lawmakers.
We know what the decision makers say.
TikTok is a Chinese spying application.
But the people most on TikTok.
TikTok is one of the #1 apps of the decade, but as soon as Sunday, it may cease to exist. Many people think of it as a mindless scrolling app, but for Skyview students, it's so much more.
They have their own opinions on their own data.
My information is already out there. It's been sold and bought probably a dozen times. It's not really valued because it's sold so easily.
Okay.
I sat down with Skyview journalism students set to lose their accounts.
Because my grandparents, live in Mexico, so they like watch me off of that.
I found one of my favorite designers off of TikTok.
It's kind of been my journal for the last 9 years.
While entertainment is a key part of the app, Bowie said it best. They're quite aware of what they're going through. And today, TikTok is an important part of that process.
What I would be losing is like news sources.
She would post like vlogs of her life living in Palestine and like bombings happening like right next to her.
I'm like, Dad, we have like Fox News and CNN. I feel like TikTok is where I get my most unbiased news from.
Though other social media platforms are available, these young people are already populating new apps like RedNote. They say it'll either never be TikTok or it already is TikTok, so what's the point of banning it?
And I mean, there's just like hundreds of people sharing.
Our TikTok is like basically like their Facebook. It's just kind of for old people.
TikTok's algorithm is so unique in the way that it can push out small groups. If we lose that, we're losing a huge part of just America's culture.
The real question remains, are the adults in the room listening?
No. If you're not gonna like respectfully listen to me, there's not a point in me spending energy on trying to educate you on things.
My parents are pretty good about like listening, but I feel like people in Congress, you know, they don't really understand.
Yes, respect your elders, but respect us back.
Chloe Walker, Andromeda Shank,
Lori Geshwa,
Jasmine Villanueva,
Carly Albertson, MTN News.
Good Thursday evening. Some clouds pushing into our sky over Montana provided a beautiful sunset of just a few minutes ago. I'm going to show you some examples of that in a few more minutes, but we also had a lot of gusty wind today, and the temperatures were above average. For Billings, look at that. 13 degrees warmer than average with a high of 49. It was closer to a record high of 59 than the average of 36. However, we have a lot of changes coming our way. I'll let you know when the really cold air is going to arrive, as well as the snow coming up in a few minutes.
22,520 criminals behind bars. That's how many fugitives have been apprehended by Montana's Violent Offender Task Force, which celebrated its 20th anniversary today. U.S. Attorney Jesse Laslovich and U.S. Marshal Craig Anderson, along with other public service officers, joined together this morning discussing the force's history and accomplishments. The task force, created 20 years ago by former U.S. Marshal Dwight McKay, was one of the first to be developed in America, with New York and Chicago also starting around that time. It was created after the state began to see rising crime numbers. In that two-decade time, the task force has not only helped bring more than 20,000 criminals to justice, the task force has also confiscated 531 weapons and 93 pounds of drugs.
The warrant is only effective when we have people like these people in this room, people across the state who are willing to risk their lives, put on their protective gear, possibly for the last time in their life, to go arrest someone and get them off the streets to save lives.
41 agencies have participated over the years, with more than 38,000 law enforcement officers taking part. The Food and Drug Administration is now banning red dye 3 from foods. That decision, which goes into effect in 2027, comes over concerns about how the food coloring dye has been linked to cancer in laboratory animals. It's a move that will impact hundreds of brands, including many popular products ranging from candy and fruit cups to snack chips. Tonight, our Haley Monaco has more on the issue, hearing from one Billings family who's happy to see it going away.
Walking down the aisles of a grocery store, it may surprise you what products have red dye 3 in them. To check, you have to grab an item off the shelf and look at the ingredient list.
The things that they hide food dyes in is crazy. We have to constantly be reading labels.
Alyssa Biddle thinks twice when it comes to what her 3 kids eat.
It's been an amazing journey to see the difference in all of their behavior.
2 years ago, she stopped feeding them food with synthetic food dyes.
At first, it can feel really overwhelming. The more people we heard were going off food dyes, I was like, that's just like, it seems so daunting.
From reading labels, the added expense of an alternative, to making snacks at home, there is a price to pay. But her children's health and well-being is invaluable.
Our oldest daughter, I think we've seen the biggest difference. So she used to have really bad night terrors, but since we've cut out food dyes, she's that's not even an issue at all.
On Wednesday, the FDA removed authorization for the artificial food coloring Red No. 3. Studies show it can cause cancer in rats, though it hasn't been confirmed to cause cancer in humans. Health advocacy groups have spent years trying to get it off the shelves.
Over 3 decades ago, a series of industry-conducted studies in rats clearly showed that this chemical, Red 3, was associated with thyroid cancers. And the law is also clear that when a chemical causes cancer in humans or animals, it is not supposed to be in the food supply.
The dye can be found in candy, frosting, strawberry milk, and frozen desserts, as well as supplements and oral medication. Thousands of products.
It is only red dye 3. But it's still a huge step.
Food manufacturers have until January 2027 to remove the dye from their products. Drug makers have until January 2028. One less dye for Biddle to look out for.
It's really, just changed our kids for the better.
In Billings, Haley Monaco, MTN News.